This is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Ribbon Run Scarf, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description where you'll find right and left-handed video tutorials, the free written pattern, and links to all the supplies you need. To make this pattern, I used Red Heart Super Saver brushed. It's just like Red Heart Super Saver for the care instructions, but it has this additional brushed quality that adds just a little bit of a halo, but still lets the texture shine through, and it's just incredibly soft to the touch. We'll also be using a USK 6.5mm crochet hook. This one is by Susan Bates. And of course, you'll need your standard crochet supplies: stitch marker, yarn needle, and scissors. The finished scarf measures approximately 8 inches wide by 76 inches long. If you'd like to change the sizing, the stitch multiple and sizing information is included in the free written pattern on mooglyblog.com. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at our Ribbon Run scarf. As you can see here, I used 2 colors of Red Heart Super Saver brushed to make the Ribbon Run scarf. I used 2 skeins of the shale or dark gray color and a partial skein of the cream, or this off-white color right here. This scarf is also made in 2 parts. First, we make the gray scarf portion, and then we simply make one long ribbon of foundation stitches in the cream color. That is then woven into these holes that are crocheted into the scarf, and then when we do our border all the way around the scarf with our dark gray color, we just make sure to capture those ends, and then it's right there, running beautifully right through the entire length of our scarf. So let's go ahead and make some of these stitches together. We begin the Ribbon Run scarf with a row of foundation double crochet, 212 to make the full length. To begin our row of foundation double crochet, I'm going to start by putting a slip knot on my hook. Then, while everybody does it a little differently, this is how I like to make my foundation double crochets. We start by chaining 2. And then I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook into the back of the very first chain I made, the one closest to the slip knot. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we have our active loop, the yarn over, and the loop I just pulled up. The loop I just pulled up will be the chain at the bottom of our first foundation double crochet. So to complete the stitch, we yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and then we finish our double crochet. Yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. That's how we make the first foundation double crochet. To make the other 211 that we need for this scarf, we yarn over, and we find the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch. Like so, just like going under the top of a stitch. Now we're going under the bottom of that previous foundation double crochet. Then we yarn over and pull a loop up and through. Now that loop will be the chain at the bottom of our second stitch. We yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and then we finish our double crochet. Yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. Let's make one more together. Yarn over, look for the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch, like so. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through just that loop, then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. If you'd like to see a tutorial for this stitch with smoother yarn where it's a little easier to see, there is a separate tutorial for foundation double crochet on the Moogly YouTube channel. Continue making these foundation double crochets until you have a total of 212 stitches. So here I have the small demo swatch that I'll be making today, but of course your row of 212 stitches will be much longer. You'll also notice I put a stitch marker here right in the front of one of my stitches, right around the middle. This will help mark the right side of my scarf throughout. Your first row is made on the right side of the scarf. Now we're ready for row 2. For row 2, we're going to start making the holes that will weave our ribbon through at the end. We start with a chain 1. And of course, we need to turn and work back into the previous row. And we're going to single crochet in the first 2 stitches. So there's 1 and 2. Then we begin the repeat that starts with the asterisk that takes us all the way across our row. We chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, And you don't want to make these 2 chains too tight. You will need to work back into them. So we chain 5, then we skip 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll put my thumb right there at the next one. Then we single crochet in the next 3. So right where I marked with my thumb, 1, 2, and 3. And that right there, starting with the chain of 5, is the beginning, and that's the end of your repeat. On our little swatch, we can do it here together right now. We chain 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, skip 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and single crochet in the next 3. That's the repeat you'll do all the way across until you get to the end, and you'll end just like this with a single crochet in each of the last 3 stitches. And now we've got some openings made for our scarf. For row 3, we start with the chain 1, and then we half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. We jump right on into our repeat here. So that means for this first one, it'll be the first 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And then we half double crochet in the back loop only of each chain. So we're going to yarn over and find that very first chain there of our 5. You can see since we've turned, they want to flip and face the back of our work a little bit. So I'm just going to use my fingers to pull the top of that chain towards me. Now, the back loop of a chain or of any stitch is always that loop that's furthest away from you. The front loop is the one that's closest. The back loop is the one that's furthest away. So we want to yarn over for our half double crochet, go under just the back loop of that first chain. That first one can be a little trickier. This is why I wanted to make sure to note that you want to make these chains big enough to work back into. Then we can yarn over and pull up our loop and finish our half double crochet as usual. That leaves just that first loop there unworked. We're going under just that back loop of the chain. It's a little easier to see there now that I've worked into it. So we're going to continue doing that in each chain. So there's our second one. You can see now that I've begun, it's a lot easier to find that back loop now that it's pulled toward us a little bit with the other stitches. But that last one still might want to hide a little bit there. It looks like it still wants to push to the back, so I just want to pull that forward towards me a little bit here. There we are. And now we have half double crocheted in the back loop only of each of those chains. And that's our repeat for this one. Half double crochet in each stitch. There's our third one. And then half double crochet in the back loop only of each chain. That is the repeat that takes us almost all the way across here. But of course, when we get to the end of this chain section, we've got those last 2 half double crochets down there at the end that we began the previous row with. So we'll just need to half double crochet into each of those. Really a nice solid row of half double crochet for row 3. The main thing to remember is that you work in the back loop only when you get to those chains. It just adds a little bit more texture and finished look to our scarf. So now we've got to those last 2 stitches. We just half double crochet right in the top of there. And that's about what it should look like at the end of row 3. For row 4, I like to start with the chainless starting double crochet, but you can use a chain 3 or whatever double crochet substitute you prefer. So I'm going to pull up my loop about to the height of a double crochet, secure the top of the loop with my finger, yarn over with the loop itself, insert my hook right on into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up my loop, yarn over again, pull through that loop and behind the yarn over, and then finally release the top of the loop, yarn over, and pull through to finish our stitch. Again, whatever type of double crochet substitute you'd like to do for that first stitch is totally fine. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we are going to single crochet in the front third loop of the next 3 stitches. So let's talk about that a little bit. In the previous row, we made half double crochets, and if you look very carefully at the anatomy of the stitch, and it's a little harder to see here because this yarn is a little fuzzy. Let me actually grab another hook here to help point this out with, or maybe a yarn needle. There we go. Alrighty, so if we look at the anatomy of the stitch, we're looking at the wrong side of our half double crochets here. And when we crochet under the top 2 loops, we would normally insert our hook right here. You can see that gives me 2 loops there on top of my needle. But we want to crochet under this front 3rd loop right here. This is a loop that's formed with the yarn over of the half double crochet, and from behind it creates this great horizontal loop right in the front of our fabric. So we don't want to insert our hook there where we normally would. We want to insert it right under that front 3rd loop right there. So if we pick up our hook here and get ourselves rearranged and double check the pattern here. So we single crochet after we skip 2, 1, 2, we're going to single crochet in the front 3rd loop of the next 3 stitches. So it's a single crochet. We don't need to yarn over first. We're just going to go right under that front 3rd loop. We don't want to come from the top. We still come from underneath, kind of push the hook away from us like we normally do. And there's 1 single crochet, and then we do it again. There's our 2nd one. And there's our 3rd, right under that front 3rd loop. And what this does is it pushes the top of that loop forward. You can see there's that stitch marker. This creates that texture on the front of our scarf. So after that, we chain 4. 3 and 4, there we are, and skip 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got my thumb marking the next one right there. Then we begin our repeat again. Single crochet in that front 3rd loop of the next 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then, of course, we would chain 4 and skip 5. Unfortunately, we can't do that here. We've only got 4 stitches remaining right here. So what we're going to do is chain 2, 1, 2, skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then simply double crochet in the very last stitch. So most of your repeats will be single crochet in the front 3rd loop of the next 3 stitches, chain 4, and skip 5. When we get to that very last one, we single crochet in the front 3rd loop of those 3 stitches, but then we just chain 2, skip 3, and double crochet in the very last stitch. And that is what it should look like at the end of row 4. Row 5 begins with a chain 1 and a half double crochet in the very first stitch, the top of that double crochet we just made. There we are. Then we half double crochet in the back loop only of those next 2 chains. So we yarn over, find that back loop only, get our hook in there. There's our first one. Back loop only loop. We just go right in between those top 2 loops, and there we are. Then we begin the repeat that starts with the asterisk for row 5. We half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. There we are. And then we half double crochet in the back loop only of the next 4 chains. So just as we were doing before, we push that chain forward a little bit, find that back loop only. The first one always likes to put up a little bit of a fight. There we go. Get under that back loop only. And then the rest after that always like to cooperate a whole lot more. It's just that very first chain likes to be a little sneaky. So there's 3 and 4. There we go. Then we begin our repeat again. Half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. And then half double crochet in the back loop only of the next 4 chains. Now we've come to our last repeat, of course. So for our last repeat, we half double crochet in those next 3 stitches, half double crochet in the back loop only of the next 2 chains. We need to handle this one just a little bit differently because the stitch count down here at the end is just a little different. There we are. And then half double crochet in that very last stitch. So whatever your double crochet substitute was, if you just used a chain 3, then you'll want to put this half double crochet in the top of your chain 3. There we go. And that is what it should look like at the end of row 5. So now you can see we've got 2 rows of holes here, and this is going to allow us to run our ribbon back and forth through these holes all the way down the length of our scarf. The remainder of the rows 6 through 15, are all just to add some width and some texture. So let's begin row 6. Row 6, we start again with a chainless starting double crochet or whatever double crochet substitute you prefer, right in that very first stitch. Sometimes people ask me if you can make that in the middle of the row. Well, you could, but it's really just meant to take the place of having to do a turning chain or a chain 3. So it's really just meant to begin a row. So after we've made that first one, then we want to double crochet in the front third loop across until 1 stitch remains, and then just double crochet in that very last stitch. So this is just that same stitch we were doing before, but now instead of making single crochets or half double crochets, we're making double crochets. But we still want to find that front third loop. Remember, we made half double crochets in the previous row. So now we've got that horizontal loop right in front of the top 2 loops. And that's where we want to put our double crochets for this entire row until we get to the very last one. And then we'll just double crochet under the top 2 loops. So we're going to do this all the way across. Sometimes it helps to sort of pull your stitches apart, make sure you find that very next stitch. If you get lost and you can't find that front third loop, you can always stop, sort of pull your stitches apart, find that next stitch, find that next horizontal third loop, and just continue to double crochet all the way across for row 6. So here I am at the end of row 6 with just 1 stitch left. So rather than working in that front third loop, I'm going to go ahead and put my final double crochet for this row, there we go, right under the top 2 loops of that very last stitch. So this is what it should look like at the end of row 6. After row 6, we make several more rows, but they're all just solid rows of stitching with a little bit of texture. Basically, rows we've made before. Rows 7 and 8 are simply rows of double crochet. You can see those in the scarf right here. Row 9, we work another row of half double crochet, and then row 10, we work it in that third loop. Again, you can see a little bit here on camera the texture that creates. We just repeat some of these rows to add a little bit of texture with our double crochets and our front loop only double crochets. So after all that, before you've made the border, then it's time to take our little scarf and set it aside and make the ribbon. Now it's time to make the ribbon. I've pulled up my purple background here because I used cream colored yarn and it's pretty difficult to see against our white table. To make the ribbon, it's all done in just 1 row. Foundation half double crochet, 260. We need more stitches in the ribbon than we have stitches in our scarf, simply because of the way it moves through the scarf itself. To make our ribbon of foundation half double crochets, we start again with a slip knot on our hook. Then, again, I start with a chain 2. 1 and 2. But I do try and make that second chain a little bit shorter. Then I'm going to half double crochet by starting with a yarn over and insert my hook in that very first chain we made. Yarn over and pull up our loop. Again, we've got our active loop, our yarn over, and the chain at the bottom of our first stitch. So now what I need to do is yarn over and pull up a loop through that first loop, and then finish our half double crochet. Yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's the first foundation half double crochet. To make the rest, we yarn over, go under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop. There we go. That will be the chain at the bottom of this stitch. Yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and then finish our half double crochet. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Let's do one more. Yarn over, insert your hook under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull up through the first loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. So continue on until you have a total of 260 foundation half double crochets. So after you've made your ribbon of 260 foundation half double crochets, you can go ahead and cut your yarn. As I say, it's just the 1 row for the ribbon. Going to go ahead and finish that off, and you don't have to leave particularly long ends for weaving in, but you should of course leave enough that you can weave in your ends securely. Now it's time to go ahead and weave our ribbon through our scarf. So now I've brought my sample scarf back up. We've worked through the section with the holes so we can add our ribbon. You'll notice I still have the yarn connected. I did not cut my yarn at the end of making the scarf. We want to leave our yarn connected to the skein so that we can add our border without having to cut our yarn and reattach it. If you did cut it, no big deal. You just have to reattach it and have a couple more ends to weave in on your finished scarf. So let's go ahead and talk about how to weave in our ribbon. Now, it doesn't really matter which end you start at. You can pick whichever end you like, but you can just go ahead and start going through the holes. Now, the trick is to make sure it doesn't get twisted. And on a longer scarf, of course, this is a little bit more difficult. Let me go ahead and I think move the purple out of the way here. I think you can see it with the white background a little bit easier, actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull that first end right up to the edge there. I'm going to use another one of my stitch markers to help secure that, to make sure I don't accidentally pull it all the way on through. There we go. And then however you like to do it, whatever's most comfortable for you, we just want to work our way up through these holes. The tricky part is not twisting it, not getting the ribbon itself to twist while you're going through those holes. So you really just want to take your time and you work your way up through the scarf. And of course, with the longer ribbon, this is going to be a little bit more difficult and take a little bit more time. But I always like to just check and make sure there's no twists, and then continue on up through all those holes. And it doesn't really matter, like I say, which end you start from. Just want to go ahead and pull it through. Now, on our little sample here, I've got some extra ones, but on the full-sized one, it should work out to where you've got that one right there. If it's a little extra long, you've got a little extra space. You can pull it back through a little bit. If it's a little tight, you might want to go and add just a couple more stitches. But it should end up right about at the other end there of our scarf. So you can go ahead and take another stitch marker if you like, and just connect those right there. Again, make sure it doesn't pull out, and then you can go back and make sure that you haven't gotten any twists or turns in there that you did not want, just like that. Now, one note, you'll notice here at this end, I pinned it in front, and this end I also had it kind of in front, but I want to make sure. Let's pull this to the back. There we go. It just looks a little bit nicer. Zhuzh it a little bit so that it looks as finished as possible here with our stitch markers. Then we can go ahead and grab our hook and start crocheting our border. Now, when you make the border, you want to make sure that you're crocheting from the right side of the scarf. Again, that's where we've got our stitch marker. It is also where the majority of that texture is going to show up on the scarf itself. Now, because of the number of rows in the finished scarf, when you go to do that, you'll actually be on this side so that you'll start crocheting across the ends of the rows first. On our little sample here, I happen to be at this end of the row. But wherever you end up, and if you decide to add rows or subtract rows to make a wider scarf or a narrower scarf, you just want to make sure that you continue from the right side of the scarf with your scarf color. The main thing is we're going to be single crocheting all the way around. And when we get to those ends of the ribbon itself, we want to make sure to crochet through both layers to really secure that to the scarf itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and single crochet right along this first row. And then I'll see you when we get to the end of this row right here. So whenever you get to a corner like this, you want to go ahead and chain 2. And then we're going to single crochet across the ends of the rows. And you want to look a little bit at the rows that you're making now, or the rows you're crocheting into, I should say. Now, the general rule of thumb that I like to follow is 2 single crochets in the side of a double crochet, 1 or 2 crochets in the side of a half double crochet, depending on what lays nicely, and 1 single crochet in the side of a single crochet row. The actual number of stitches here doesn't matter. You just want the row to look nice and lay nice and flat. Too many stitches and it will ruffle, too few stitches and it will try and pull together here at the end. So again, whatever number of stitches looks good to you. And if you want to do something fancier with the edge, you absolutely could, but I do recommend that you add this round of single crochet first just to help tack down everything and get it all assembled. Then you can go back around again with a fancier border if you like. So here we are, we've come to where the ends of one of the ribbons are. I can double check and make sure that I want to attach it in front of this end double crochet right here. So I'm going to make sure that I hold that in front of the previous, or the other stitch, I should say, the scarf stitch. I'm going to go ahead and pull that stitch marker out of the way though. And then As I make these next couple stitches, I'm just going to make sure that I go through the end of the ribbon and the end of the scarf behind it. I'll just make the usual single crochets. And this is where, like I say, half double crochets, 1 or 2. When I'm attaching down this scarf, I definitely want to go through it twice. There we go. There's 1, and then I'll go through that double crochet right behind it. Again, there we go. Pull that through and make our single crochet. And just like that, that end of the ribbon is nicely tacked down. Of course, we still have our end that we need to weave in when we're all done. Then I can just go back to crocheting right along the end of the scarf here until I get to this next corner, where of course I will do the same thing. I will chain 2, 1, 2, single crochet all the way across. This would be at the bottom of row 1, but because we made those foundation stitches, we've got these beautiful bottoms of our stitches to work into with 2 loops. Looks just like the top of a stitch, and it won't give us that gapping that sometimes you can get when you work into the bottom unused loop of a stitch that's been made the standard way. So again, we just single crochet all the way across to here, chain 2, and then we want to do the same thing at this end. For this end, we'd want to hold the white behind and go through the gray first, but it's the exact same technique, just tacking down the ribbon as you go. And that's how to crochet the Ribbon Run Scarf, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.